Before we get into the demonstration, I did just want to give you a quick overview of the agenda, and we can review it now. So first off, today we're gonna jump in and talk about visibility into your projects and how you can use our analytics tools to help you pivot and view data in valuable ways to be able to audit your projects effectively and see information on project costs quickly and easily. We're also going to take a look at how Kahua helps our customers easily adopt the tool by being easy to use. And so we'll introduce some of the platform functionalities and just how you move around the system a little bit and get familiar with that. Following that, we'll dive into our cost work breakdown, how it's established and set up with our customers, and some of the advantages of having a cost breakdown or work breakdown structure for managing your job budget and cost. Following the establishment of that code structure, organizations will also need to manage their fund sources oftentimes. And so we'll look at how you can manage fund sources in the system and how you can have fund sources filtered down through the project effectively. Once we've talked about the fund source management, we'll dive into establishing a baseline budget and managing the changes to that budget. Following that, we'll talk about the procurement of contracts, the associated changes to contracts, and all of their associated pay requests and invoicing. And then finally, we'll talk about our cash flow tool and how it pulls data out of costs and helps you easily produce cash flows with minimal effort. With that, let's go ahead and dive into the product, and we'll start off with some of our analytics. All right, so I have opened up Kahua, and when I open up the system, I have it opening to my analytics page. And I wanted to show you a few example dashboards that we've created for various customers. This is Microsoft Power BI. It's built into the Kahua product, which makes it very easy and accessible for you to have the reports and analytics you require. It also gives you one streamlined interface for those analytics. In other words, when a customer logs in or one of your users logs in, they need to be able to see reports and dashboards. They're not going off to separate pages and things like that to find them. Log in, be looking at your analytics, and even drill through from analytics to the resulting records, which can be really convenient, again, for the end user using the tool. So I'm in my dashboard here, my analytics dashboard. I do want to give a little heads up or let you know that when you're in these analytics and dashboards, they do have group security. So you may not need everybody to see everything about all your projects, and these analytics can respect your group permissioning to see which dashboards you have access to. Here's a simple analytics dashboard I'm looking at, and it's giving me a quick summary of my project and where it is. If I want to do a quick look at one, I select the project from the list. Upon selection, I can see where it is in terms of status, a quick view of what the project is. I can see the usage of funds for the project, who are all the key contacts. I can see the project on a map, and then I can see a list of the, at a high level, budget, commit, and spend for the project. Down below, I can see a quick graph that shows me some of the same information visually to see where we are in terms of what's been spent and what's remaining. Some of the things we found to be very valuable for our customers is to not just view data based on project. Sometimes I want to pivot that information effectively by, say, location. Here's an example of a dashboard that we built for one of our customers, and again, what was really valuable to them was the ability to not just look at things by project, but by location. A lot of times people get asked questions or get asked to report data not by a single project, by a group of projects, and the grouping can vary depending on the questions being asked. And this one was by location, so when someone like on a board member, city council would ask them questions, the people managing the projects could select the location or area, region within their district they're managing and immediately zip into those projects. So I picked, in this case, an example of zip code, showing me the projects in that zip code. When someone asks, hey, how are the projects going in my particular area? Select it, and then I'm looking at all the projects we're working on. I can see on the right a quick update on status. I can see what we've budgeted and spent to date, and I can see again that cost summary roll up. So this is a powerful dashboard and shows if you're managing costs in the system, you start to get really valuable insights into project information easily. Just a couple of quick additional examples here. Sometimes you just need to be able to see a flat list of all your projects with what's been funded, budgeted, committed, and spent. And that's what this log is. And I can head over here and see all the different values we're tracking and how it rolls up effectively. And again, with simple little filters at the top, I only want to see the ones that might be in design or in construction. Maybe I want to select a particular project, but it's easy to drill through and get quick insights into the work. This chart here, there's a lot of text on the screen, but it's actually provided a lot of value again to our customers. This is where someone needs to go audit fund sources. So at a glance, you could select the fund source in the top table, and you can really watch all the other tables start to adjust. So I start with the fund source. That'll list out for me all of the appropriations to that specific fund source. I can pick the appropriation, and then we'll start to see all of the reserves and releases and usages of those funds for those specific projects. So again, a way to filter and drill through, not just at a cost level or a project level, but pivoting the data based on fund if I need to answer questions or provide valuable reporting related to funding. All right, so we've looked at a couple of dashboards. I'm going to go ahead and move from here into our interface and just talk about how easy it is to navigate around and move through the system effectively. I'm actually going to swap projects now and go somewhere else really quickly, and we're going to jump into one of my other projects. All right, so now I'm in my new school project, and it opened up to a dashboard. I'm seeing information here, but we're going to drive into costs pretty quickly. So, open up work breakdown. You'll see it opens. This is an app. I selected an app, and it opens in the right-hand side of the screen, and I can then see my cost information at a glance. It just shows a single line summary. We'll drill into work breakdown in a moment here. What I really want to focus on is this left-hand navigation bar. So we're going to navigate through all the various components of the system very briefly. So if we move, we're going to go kind of counterclockwise here. If I start over in the top right, you see a picture of me, my name, and the organization I'm a part of. Moving a little bit left, I see my messages and my tasks. Messages are anything that comes from the system, so an email or a message from the system to let me know something. A lot of times I'm being distributed or copied on key information or notified of a task in my court. The tasks app we'll look at in a little bit is anything that's been sent to me following court to work on, and that it makes it easy for me to see everything in one list of all the different items sent to me for review and approval. Moving left, I can see I'm in the work breakdown app. We call business processes in our system apps. So I'm currently in work breakdown. That's shown here as well as it being highlighted on the left. And I'm in this project called the new school project. Moving over to this app launcher bar, I can see that I'm at this accordion menu, that accordion closed, and I can open with a simple click. So if I want to maximize my screen real estate on the right, just fold it out of the way, bring it back as I need to see the words. Few critical items I want to look at. This is my app launch bar. These are all my favorite tools I use all the time. You're going to have like your app menu where you open up various apps. This is very similar to like Windows, or if you use Office 365, you can kind of click in the top left and get a menu of the different tools you can use. For example, in cost management, I could quickly select fund sources and open up fund sources, or I could open up general invoices just by selecting it. So this opens key tools. Once you select it, it opens on this bar down here, and then you can even pin it if it's something you use often. So the next time you open Kahua, it'll be right there, so you're one click away from it. So very easy to maintain all your favorite apps or tools on the left-hand side of the screen, and then just drag them and drop them up and down the screen so they're easily accessible for use. We have the project finder, and that's how you navigate among your projects easily. And the key thing here is you're going to go to your My Projects list and you'll just pick a project. It's really simple and straightforward. Pick the project, it opens in a click. We already looked at the analytics, and you can search the system by clicking search. It makes it easy to find things either within a project or across projects. We even search the contents of files. So there's not going to be anything you can't find in the system. It's all indexed and searchable. And from here on out, you're just going to see me clicking on these different apps on the left, opening them up, and working. And there's a very similar look and feel to all of them. I think you're going to see that as we move through the system. So I'm going to start with work breakdown. And why am I starting with work breakdown? It's really a kind of a critical backbone component of our system. This is where you establish your cost codes for the projects, and once they're established, you'll be able to leverage those cost codes in various apps like contracts or change orders, basically documents or records in the system that reference these line items and help maintain a single not general ledger, a ledger of all your project costs. When you open it, it just shows a single line. And this is my single line summary of my project. I can select this arrow and drill through, or click this little arrow at the top to drill down and open up all of these items in the cost work breakdown. You'll notice that this is hierarchical, so the values roll up. Design fees at $250 roll up to soft costs, which roll up in total with the other items at those levels to the full budget amount. These cost codes here are just some sample cost codes. These will be adjusted per your requirements. We've got some customers that have very simple flat structures. They may just have one level of cost codes and they just need to track 8 or 10 critical items, and it's simple and easy. They get a lot of value from having it consistent across projects. We have customers that have many levels of depth of this cost coding structure with 7 or 8 levels of codes. We can handle more than that, but that's usually about the max of what we see out of customers. At the top of the screen, you have money that rolls into different groups and columns. For instance, the current budget section here, and you'll see I have my original budget, all of the adjustments to the budget, any approved changes to the budget, and then this sums to my current budget. This shows us two things. One, I can have different columns, and these pull from our different records in the system. And I can also have calculations where, moving from left to right, my current budget is the sum of the original, the adjusted, and the changed. So I'm always looking at my current budget, just some of the various registers or logs of budget modifications. Moving over, I have my pending budget, commitments. I've got a whole bunch of columns here, and I'm really wanting to show you a couple things. One, Kahua is flexible to meet your requirements with calculations on variances and percents complete and remaining and all these sorts of things, your forecasts, and many other items. For some, though, this might be a fairly heavy column structure here. Understand your view can be changed, so you can establish your naming of these columns, how many you care to see, and users can even come in and tweak which ones they're seeing. Suppose they don't want to see the pending budget or the pending commitments or all the variances. They just want to see what's budgeted, committed, and spent to date. Then these columns get a lot narrower, a lot quicker, and it's easy to view and see. I'm going to go ahead and click on one of these as an example here. I'm going to select a budget change. So I have $2,500 in budget change on design fees. If I select that, that opens up this little dialog and says that $2,500 came from the first line item of budget change 2. So this is giving me really good audit into the different transactions that are occurring on the project, where I can see all the modifications made. When I selected that, you'll notice it opened up to the budget changes record, that the app, and the specific record of this budget change, and I can view and see there's the reference to that cost code and it's approved dollars in the 2,500. So I've easily audited to that specific area. I could even go further choosing history, and it will show me a deeper dive into what's gone on with this record, including every edit, every view, every modification to this record, previous and new. This gives really good insight and audit into projects. Do you need to click history on records every day? Probably not, but when you are trying to trace and back and see who changed what and when, you have a full audit trail in the system for every record. So again, hopefully you're seeing some value here in the cost work breakdown tool, the ability to track your project costs, have a common cost budget or ledger across all projects, so we know we budget and commit things the same way across projects. We do allow configuration if you do have complex requirements where you need different work breakdowns for different project types, you can. Last thing I want to note too, this can seem intimidating to some folks when they think, well, am I going to have to type all this in to start the job? Answer is no. You can import these in via Excel, create a template, and so when new projects are stood up, you're going to have all of your standard cost codes preset, ready to go. Either create a new budget from scratch or import it from Excel, and you're off to the races managing your project. So before we dive further into the project budget, commit, spend, some of the project specific records that you might create or manage on a project, I do want to take a step back and talk a moment about fund sources and how fund sources are helping our customers manage the splitting and allocation and reporting of their fund sources. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up a slide that I think helps describe our fund source management tools well and kind of give you a background into how some of these components work. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up here. So imagine, and we're just using generic terms like A, B, and C here, but imagine you had 3 fund sources that you might be managing across one or many projects. You can establish what the fund's name is and some category information, and just basically set up those funds in Kahua. So that's what you would do first. And then Kahua helps you track appropriations to those funds. So you can see here I've got some fiscal year appropriations where each year we're going to appropriate money into those funds. And so I'm tracking the full fund amount as well as the individual appropriation amount. Now what happens next is we will reserve money, which is like earmarking it, or release money to projects. So you can see now those funds have had money reserve and release into sub-projects to now be managed. When you reserve the money, it's earmarked. You still can't write budgets and commitments and spends or actuals against it until the money's actually released. So you can hold the money back and reserve it to make sure you have enough to finish the projects you need to in your capital improvement plan, but you can also make sure only the released amounts are available to people to actually do the work, so we don't over budget or over obligate or commit or spend our funding, and the system will help in the management of that. So now how do we know when the money is distributed to budgets and contracts and purchase orders and invoices? How do we know how to allocate that money? Kahua uses fund rules. Fund rules are where you can predetermine based on the cost work breakdown how money should be allocated. So we might say land is using 60% from Fund C and 40% of the total value from Fund B. And the system can auto-allocate that and help enforce it to make sure you have appropriate funding prior to either budgeting, committing, or spending those dollars. And then you can see that following in this next item here, where what you'll end up with is every record is going to know exactly what fund source the money came from following the rules. Couple of critical points here. One, for the person that's managing the funds, you're going to have fantastic visibility to all the project funding information and understand there's controls and governance in place. To the person that's managing the work, the system's automatically handling the fund source distribution. So we're going to see it in product in a minute, but it really streamlines and makes this a lot easier because you don't have to be in the details. The system's auto-calculating your fund usage and maintaining the controls and compliance required. So let me jump over to a project that's got that set up here, so just bear with me while we pull that up. And I'm going to jump in and take a look at my sources of funds. And in my sources of funds, you'll see that I have a list of 3 fund sources. And these are just some sample fund sources. You can have as many as you need, but I've got state funds, I've got grants, and I have some sort of capital funding. As we move left to right, a quick summary of these funds, I can see what was originally funded, any changes that have occurred, right? We were told we're going to get $1 million. We find out it's $985 by the end of the year. I can document those changes and communicate those effectively. What's currently funded, then across all the projects these funds are being distributed to, I can see the reserve, release, budget, commit, and invoice amount. If I select a fund source, I can also see details into that fund, and this screen is intended to be really a one-screen view of the funds, which makes it very easy for the person managing the funds to track. So if I'm managing a fund, I might come in and choose the Edit button, and in here I can do a few things. I can document when the fund starts and finishes. I can track the status of the fund, right? The fund might be created but not yet approved for usage in some way. I can view a summary of the funds. This is that same list we looked at a moment ago where I have the original amount, changes, etc. I can see all of the fund appropriations, so the start and finish date of the fund, if there's particular rules in the usage of the fund, or the appropriation. I can see the original amount of the appropriation and its usage. Continuing down, I can look and see all of the projects that this fund is being used on. And so these projects, these are where these reserves and releases of funds were created. You just hit select projects and programs, add a new, it could be in batch 8 or 10 projects, put in the reserved and released amounts, and then those funds are available to those jobs. And then down here I can see the changes to those funds as well. So a lot here on one screen makes it very easy for someone managing the funds to go to one spot to manage everything about that fund. But what about the person that's managing the project and is actually creating the budget, creating the invoices and the purchase orders and those sorts of things? How do they interface with that? And that's what we want to look at next. I'm going to jump into a project, this NSD alleyway maintenance project here briefly. And in this project, I have a few things to show. First off, you'll notice when I go to the fund sources section, I only see the released amount to this project. So whereas we had 3 fund sources at a program level, I'm only see the 2 here because these are the only 2 available to this particular project. Now, what am I going to do as a user when I manage the project? It's very, very simple and straightforward. I'm going to go into my budget tool or contracts or other parts of the system, and I'll create records, right? I might create a budget or create a budget change, etc. And we'll look at those in more detail in a moment. The critical thing I want you to see is if I look at the items here, so these are the line items of that budget, what's going on behind the scenes, and this is something you don't have to do as a project manager or project coordinator. The system will do it for you, is it identifies that for this general construction line item, on budgets, contracts, change orders, and others, it automatically knows based on fund rules what to do with that money. In other words, this $1 million for construction was automatically using 65% of state funds and 35% of grant funds. Whereas on a different part of the project budget, say freight in this case as an example, it is a different cost code and thus using all state funds and no grant money. So there may be different rules that are put in place to help distribute those funds, and this is the mechanism by which it's done. Again, did I hand type this in? No, the system auto pulls those values, again making it very easy for project team members to track. And then last thing, we're not going to dive into a whole lot of detail, but for those that are interested in how those fund rules are established, we're just going to quickly look at one. I'm going to choose this construction cost item or rule, pardon, and you'll see here that it is this is where the fund rule is established, and I told the system do a 65-35 split of these and do them at the same time, order one. This is a very simple fund rule. It could have 5 steps, or it could be multiple funds that are being distributed by percent or even amount as well. It's not limited to percent. So this is where you establish that. Again, this can be established by someone managing the funds. The project team just imports a budget, approves it, and all the calculations are done for them. Now that we've talked about fund sources and fund sources being set up on our projects, I'm going to go back into my other project I was looking at earlier, this new school project, and we're just going to briefly talk about the budget management component of the work, as well as the contract cost management capabilities of the system as well. So I'm going to open up my work breakdown. I'm back here in this work breakdown where we talked about this is showing the values of all your budget, commit, and spend across the project. And when I do, you'll notice we looked at a budget change earlier, but I'm going to go to my original budget. So I'm going to choose this original budget line, and you can see I have money in this final approved budget, $100,000, where I had established a budget amount for the job. This is going to take me to our budget app, and in here I can see the actual budget that was routed for review and approval and tracked throughout the system. I can see the total amount of 1.4 million, and if I scroll down I can see the line items that are totaling that, and I can see that design fees amount that I just moved to. How do you create a budget in the system, or a budget adjustment, or whatever it is? It's very straightforward. You're just going to click on the new button, and once you click new, it'll ask you to fill out a form. We have simple modern forms. I would put in my budget for approval, and then down here in the items section you can just list out the cost line items for that particular budget. Some people will also templatize this, so projects start off with a basic budget with no values, and you just come in and type down the values here. Let's put in the amount, hit save, and you're off to the races. You'll notice a few places in my site here I have currency listed. Kahua is a multi-currency, multi-language system. For those that are not managing money in multiple currencies, those are all hidden, and you don't have to worry about selection of any currency. So you go in, enter the line items, you're done. We can also support import. There's a little import button, and you can hit the import button and it'll pull this in from Excel, so you don't need to come in and enter it if you have lots of rows of budget, or if you're estimating your values of your budget from another source. So that's the basics of establishing a budget. Once this thing's approved, then the values hit the cost work breakdown. And in fact, let's go ahead and submit this thing for approval. I want you to at least see how easy it is. This is just a one-line budget, just a small amount here. I'm going to go ahead and save and close this, and then once it is saved, you'll see I get this submit for review and signature button to go ahead and get that budget approved. I have a few buttons here. I'm an admin. I've got a couple of buttons. Usually we'll kind of tighten this in so that, for instance, maybe I'm going to force a review and then a signature on the budget or contract or other records in the system. But so know these buttons can shift a little bit depending on the way you're trying to accomplish this. But let's say I want to get this budget reviewed. So we can choose submit for review to route this budget for review prior to approval. And you can see that fires it off into workflow for budget approval on this project. Now, what is workflow in Kahua? How do you interface with this or interact with this as a user? It's very simple. This is done with our Tasks app. Tasks makes it very easy for team members to manage the ball and court workflows in their court. In fact, you'll see on the bottom right, I just received a notification telling me that I have a budget for review on the project. This took me to the actual task when I selected the notification. I can review the document, so Kahua will produce document on your paper. We can sort of mail merge a template document so that you'll have your forms. You can use ours too. We have modern, nice views, but if you do have specific forms that are important to you, those are things that we can create an implementation or you can create. I can also see any backup documentation that was submitted as well, and even hit the view button and see any backup documentation that might have been transmitted along with this as well. So this really makes a neat, nice package for me to just, everything I need to know about approving that budget's been transmitted along with it. I'll review it, approve it, and complete it. So how do I actually approve or review that record? This is a review. I can add some comments. If there's no comments, I might just say no comments. And then choose to complete my review with the review complete. That will pass on to the next person in the workflow, and it'll continue on. You'll see in the top up here it says delegate. I could have also delegated that task to somebody else. So, and we also support auto delegation. So let's talk about those two things. This task list is all ball and court items that have been transmitted to you. And you can sort and filter it in different ways that makes it easy for you to be able to navigate and find the tasks that are important for you to complete. It is a multi-project and multi-app list. That means I'm seeing all these different tasks from all these different projects all in one list. So if I want to know what I've got to do, I can come to this one list and execute on it. I'm also able to choose to delegate. If the task comes to me and it needs to go to someone else, there's a delegate button. I can delegate it to somebody else. Also, if I receive a task in my court and I'm on vacation or on leave or PTO, the system can auto-delegate it to somebody else. And then when that person reviews or approves the document, it will be done on my behalf by that person. So if you're out of office, to keep the project moving, to keep all the workflow going on the project and not being held up by people being out, it auto-delegates to the appropriate party with out of office leave. And you can establish that by, a user can set it up as well as administrators. So easy to review, easy to approve. Another thing that's really important to understand about these budgets and contracts and changes in any cost record is that we can use conditional and delegation of authority workflows out of the box to review and approve these documents. What does that mean? This document will go from person to person to person looking to get approved, and you can set authority limits and thresholds. Jordan Hand cannot approve a budget over $100,000 without someone else looking at it, and so it'll auto find the correct people to approve, which means when I received that budget and I approved it or reviewed it a moment ago, I knew that it went to all the appropriate people first, and then when I'm done with it and I click that button, it's going all the way to the right people afterwards, and I didn't have to pick the people. The system knows and enforces that compliance and control. Again, these tasks, not limited to budgets, could be pay requests, could be change orders, everything just lands in this easy to use list that I can drill through as required. All right, continuing on to look at some more cost records before finishing up on the cash flow components of the system. Back in where we were looking at a budget earlier, I wanted to just briefly note we also have budget adjustments and budget changes. A budget adjustment is a usually zero net sum modification of the project budget. In other words, we're moving money maybe in and out of contingencies to meet requirements of the project. Design is going to go over a little bit. We pull from project contingency. We can show that project contingency. I remember doing this kind of stuff in Excel, and when you're in Excel, you'd end up with cells where you're like equals this plus that minus this plus that, and you could never know what came from what. This gives you a really nice log to see what kind of changes we're making, how are the changes occurring, and again, they're very easy to establish. You hit new, in this case I could hit edit here and type in the line items, a negative to one, a positive to the other, hit submit for review and approve, or just manually do it depending on your business processes, and then I will see that reflected back on the cost work breakdown. Going back to that budget, the current budget is the original baseline budget plus those changes to the budget. We also support budget changes. We looked at one earlier, just at a high level. A budget change is usually not net zero. It's going to be raising or lowering the budget. We understand organizations often have additional approvals around that, and so we have a couple of separate registers, one for adjustments and one for changes, so that you can route those documents differently depending on your requirements. All right, let's move into costs. I'm going to go over here and take a look at, not only do I have the budget and commit and all that kind of stuff, I also have, or the budgets also have commitments and change orders and others. I'm going to select on a contract or a commitment here, and you can see when we select one, it'll show me the various contracts where that particular line is being used. And if I select one, it'll take me and audit me back into the contracts tool. So at the top of the screen where it comes to my contract expenses on the job, you notice I have contracts, associated change requests or claims related to the contract, any contract change orders or modifications that's going to modify the original contract. By the way, when I say contract, purchase order is often used as another term for this. So if you're familiar with purchase order internally, it's basically your POs. And then I have pay requests, and the pay requests include the contract values as well as the schedule of values. It includes the schedule of values with both the contract and change order. A couple of key points about contracts. One is you can establish a project contract easily in the system. We also understand a lot of organizations already have an accounting system or ERP that's doing this, or may have a procurement division that's doing this. So understand this can also be integrated to your existing software stack if you have other team members in the organization that are logging and procuring contracts. It becomes more of a logging tool versus the actual production of that document, which Kahua can support. So I've got a lot of contracts as samples here for different purposes and in my test project here, but let's just look at a couple of ones that I think are important. One is, here's an example of a contract to a CM as an example, and in here I want to show an interesting tool that we have, which is the ability to manage uncommitted contingencies and allowances. So we've seen some of our, especially like city and school organizations that will commit contingencies into projects to streamline the change process, but then have a contingency use authorization type process or business process to control the usage of those contingencies. Kahua allows that, so you can write a contract with like multiple lines here, in this case contract contingency and allowances, and then we establish the schedule of value of the contract. So once the contract's reviewed, approved, goes to the appropriate parties, it's routed, again, we can produce the document. If you're not trying to produce documents, you're actually just wanting to log the costs, we do both. But the contract SOV is generated and broken down. So here is our schedule of value for that particular commitment, and you'll see that it shows those lines, and certain ones are allocated and certain ones are unallocated. What does this mean? If I go create a pay request, some are available to be on the pay request and are allocated to the pay request, some are not payable. And so you can use this unallocated and allocated amounts on the SOV items to only allow certain items to be payable and help track committed and uncommitted allowances. This has been very valuable, folks. So one thing when you establish the SOV, a lot of times people can have very, very large schedules of values that can be a little bit unwieldy to manage. So what we do is we enable easy import from Excel. So you can approve the contract, send it to your vendor, your contractor, an Excel sheet saying, hey, fill this out. This is going to be your schedule of values. Import it in, make sure it's acceptable, approve it, and then this is what appears on the pay request. And at a glance, I can see for everything on the SOV, all of the changes that have been made to date. And if I go to my pay request, I'll see the paid amounts as well. Before we go to pay requests, I'm going to take a step back. So my contract's been created. My contractor now has a schedule of values. And what's going to happen on a project, invariably we will have change. And just like we talked about with the budget changes, adjusting the budget, changing the budget, Kahua can also do the same thing with costs. So I can see a list of all of my claims or change requests made by the contractor or other vendors and easily view these in the system. We can even be collaborative, enabling your vendors to log in the system and this be the mechanism by which they request change. And this can help alleviate some of the administrative requirements of putting the data in the system. Just have it enter once by the appropriate party in the tool and then go through the appropriate business process. In this case, the process is to review and approve the change request. And then someone clicks this little process button here, and what it does is it copies the data over from the change request into a change order, and then you'll end up with the actual change order or modification to the contract resulting from that change request. So here's my change order log. I can see the status of all these change orders, which are all the different claims or change requests that have been made and added to change orders and reviewed and approved. Again, out-of-the-box workflows for review and approval of these, configurable to your requirements as well. And also just know a lot of times, especially as the project grows, like for instance here I'm looking at this big list of change orders and it kind of be hard to know which one's for which just looking at text on a screen. We do have really convenient grouping, viewing, and sorting mechanisms so that it's easy to see project information in different ways more effectively. In this case, for instance, I'm now grouping my change orders by status then contract. So I can just roll through here, pick the contract, and easily see exactly where everything is in terms of status and ball in court, making it easy to see this information and manage it appropriately. Speaking of change orders, an interesting fact, we've built out of the box a special extra step in our change orders for board approval. We've seen this being a requirement for schools and cities, for like city council and others. Sometimes these change orders get to a certain point, they need to kind of be held and wait for the board to approve, and we capture that process in here as well to streamline your communication as a project team to the appropriate project stakeholders. So, change requests, change orders, managing contract changes and purchase order changes in the system. We also have the pay request process. Kahua is a collaborative system. You can, again, engage your project stakeholders, let them be involved in this process. And so you think about that schedule of values breakdown we created earlier. This is where I can say, we have established sort of that pencil copy pay request. The contract was signed and agreed upon. The contractor has submitted to us their schedule of values. We've reviewed it. We've approved it. We accept this particular SOV to be the one we're going to move forward with. And then as changes occur, only change orders that are approved are allowed to be on that pay request. So when someone comes in here to request payment, they're only requesting payment against approved change orders. No one can send in anything that hasn't been through the appropriate process yet, so you're not paying anything that's not yet ready to be paid. Here's that contract we were looking at earlier to that particular organization. They have some pay requests that are out for review, some that are approved, some are in different states. But at the end of the day, what does Kahua include in terms of pay requests? We have a simple and easy form to enter in to track the contract payments. You're going to see the period of billing, the information on remittance and holds and payment. You can see the ball in court status. This one's approved. It's not assigned to anybody currently. I can see when it was sent for signature and review. We show the summary of the payment, what was the original plus change, what's due. And then down here in the line items of the payment request, I can see the different items of the payment as well. And I'm actually going to expand these out a little bit and take up more of the screen with them. So this becomes our schedule of values that came from the contract into the SOV with the change orders. I can see what was completed percent to date. I can also enter in work completed this period and material stored. Again, your contractor can log in, submit this, attach documentation, route it to you for review and approval. This becomes that place for the pencil copy to be routed and tracked in the system where people are only submitting items that are allowed to be paid at this point. So it provides strong governance, easy to use, the correct stakeholders are putting the information in without duplicate data entry. So I'm going to just kind of pause there for a second. We've gone through a lot so far. I want to finish up with cash flow here, but what you've seen so far, project starts, you can have your work breakdown that you've established as an organization, and our teams can help with that. You have the establishment of the fund sources and the fund source flow down through the project, through the program into the project. You've got all of the cost tools you might require, things like budget and adjustments to budgets and contracts and changes, payments. We saw the end result of those, which was the analytics at the beginning of this, the easy views and analytics and reports that you'll be able to have because the data is being tracked effectively. So you have compliance and audit and control of the project costs with visibility to say to answer questions and report effectively to project stakeholders. I do want to finish with cash flow briefly, and so we'll move to an example cash flow project. All right, so I've jumped over to a project where I've got a simple cash flow set up, and we'll kind of talk through what a cash flow looks like in Kahua, how it's established. This is a cash flow record, pretty simple. I can see we do a monthly cash flow to our organization. I can see which one it is in terms of order, because you can go through versions of a cash flow. I can see when it starts and ends some basic settings. Pretty simple form here. But what's critical is this: our cash flow forecasting tool is connected to our cost tools. And this means that you can, as you manage your project costs and keep up with your actuals and contracts and budgets and all these different things in the system, the cash flow kind of falls out of all that. In other words, the cash flow is going to gather all that information up on a monthly basis for you and allocate it correctly for you to then review the projected cash flow on a time scale. So we're going to see how that happens. Basically, at the end of the month, or whenever you do your cash flows, you would click New Version, create the next cash flow, saving a copy of the previous for historical data purposes, and then you pick this Manage tab. Manage then it summarizes the cost work breakdown by line item. And it could be multiple items deep. We found a lot of people want to kind of roll those up to keep them simple here. And so now it has taken all of the, in this case, and this is configurable, but it's taken all of the budget values for the project and based on a start and end date and a curve type is spreading that over the duration of the project. And each line can have different durations. The current period is highlighted in blue, so it's very easy to see. And then any actuals that have come in, so we've started to spend some money on design here, as you can see, and any money that has come in as an actual lands in the appropriate period based on the dates on the invoice, and those which date that is and things like that are definable. One of the things I like to do is come in here and you can actually lock these so they're easy to see as you move left or right and kind of keep track of which one you're looking at as you look at the time scale. You can also adjust the dates, right? Suppose our soft cost is early in design, kind of moving through construction administration, but maybe construction goes later. I can change the year. In this case, so I move the construction project out a year, and you can see it respread all the details and data out a year. You can change the curve type to respread the money as well, front loaded, back loaded, etc. I can also do manual and make manual adjustments also. So I can come in here and tweak these numbers, and then it will show a variance, and then based on my organizational requirements around variances, I can either clear the variance or leave it depending on the way you forecast. So very easy to come in here and forecast. Again, these amounts here come from the budget and the cost system. It's automatically merged and respread based on actuals, doing all those calculations for you. You just come in, check the amounts, make some adjustments to the spread. You can even connect these to milestones. So in this case, I could pick a particular schedule milestone, and in lieu of the cost line being driven by my manual date entry, notice this has changed to the milestone dates and is now adjusted based on schedule changes. So as the schedule changes and your budget changes and your commitments change, this auto changes at the appropriate period. So it's easy to create a cash flow, easy to report a cash flow. I'll go ahead and run a quick cash flow report as well, just so you can quickly see how easy it is to also generate a report of this. So I'm going to go to my reporting tools here. I'm going to select the cash flow and then view the report. And in this case, we're going to generate like your standard cash flow curve type report. And again, these can be adjusted based on organizational requirements. We have a full reporting engine and report writer that's easy to create very advanced reports. We also have simple ad hoc reports as well, and these reports can be scheduled to auto send to the appropriate stakeholders. So again, just summarizing, hopefully you've seen a lot today in terms of how Kahua can help you manage cost from the budget process through commitments and spend, the fund source tracking and overlay across multiple projects, cash flow forecasting, and then the analytics, the visibility across the program with all these data. Thank you very much for your time today, and happy to address any questions. Thank you.
Jordan, thank you so much. That was such a great presentation. We do have one last poll question for you guys, so go ahead and submit your answer choices. And while you do that, Jordan will start with the first question from the Q&A box.
All right, great. So I'm going to answer question 1 and question number 8 there at the same time. There are 2 questions regarding integrations. One was regarding just interest in us integrating with third-party GL platforms, your ERPs, et cetera. The other was very specific around SAP and how it integrates with the schedule of values tool. At the end of the day, Kahua is a highly configurable tool. We can the way integrations look for customers can vary based on their business processes. So we like to come in and assess how you're doing things and adjust to meet your requirements. So happy to talk more about that as appropriate if you're interested in learning more about how we do integrations. I can say on the SAP one common thing we've seen is SAP may not carry all the cost items and breakdown you would need to manage a construction project, and sometimes we'll bring in just the high-level values into, say, our purchase order or contract module, and then use the SOV tool to expand those further out. Question 2 was regarding the POC, and someone can reach out to you from our team on connecting on those requirements. I'm more on the product and services side than that. So we can have someone reach out to you. Question 3, is Kahua locally installed or solely cloud-based? The vast majority of our work is cloud-based, and we'd generally highly recommend you be in the cloud unless you have very specific circumstances like high security requirements and things like that, and then we can work with your organization to meet those. CAD model, what are the CAD models and the construction features that we work with? There's a variety of CAD modeling tools that we can work with our integration with BIM and the Autodesk viewer. Some of those include IFC, Navisworks, SketchUp, Revit, and others. And we can, if you need a follow-up on that and how it works and some demonstration of that, happy to support that as well. There's a question on digital signatures and integrating with digital signatures like DocuSign. We do include an integration with DocuSign, and the licenses of DocuSign are also included with Kahua, so that it is very easy to send out signature envelopes right out of the system with one click and follow your workflows for those, which is really convenient. There's a question on fund rules and a hard stop on the fund rules. Kahua does have configuration there on the fund rules, so some organizations do want that hard stop where you cannot exceed the funds. Others do want there to be the ability to go over or potentially be warned. Those items are configurable to meet your requirements. On item 9 from Javier, can we get a copy of the presentation? Actually, I might let Dominga give more information on that one. And
yep, you guys will be receiving a recording of this in a couple of days.
Great. Let's see here. I do want to be respectful of people's time. I know we're getting close to the time here. Javier asked, can we integrate with other PMIS systems? Out of the box, we don't have integrations with other PMIS systems. Would probably be helpful to understand exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and we'd love to follow up with you on that. There's question 11 there. Are there any constraints regarding which outside platforms or data types can be integrated or imported into Kahua? That's a good question. I mean, there's always constraints in any of these sorts of implementations and work and all that. I think you would find that we have pretty good margin on that, and we've been very adjustable and configurable to meet organizational requirements on integrations. Would be happy to assess those more. We've integrated with very large enterprise ERP systems, as well as like the very small ERPs and a lot of them in between. So would be interested to know maybe what some of your use cases are, what some of your concerns are on another conversation. But we've been able to meet a lot of requirements of our customers. Crystal asked, is Power BI included in the licensing for analytics? So the Power BI, if you use the analytics built into Power BI, that licensing is included, is my understanding, and happy to have someone in our sales group provide more clarity.